We're going to be talking about creating a GitHub Copilot extension today. And just a bit about me. So I'm currently a developer advocate at a company called Pomerium. We secure your internal apps. Happy to chat about that if you want to, but that's not what we're talking about today. I'm from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, like I said. I'm Nicky T online pretty much everywhere, and these are all the places you can find me. And I'm not a big fan of spiders, and I feel like my voice is going to crack like I'm going through puberty again for some reason. All right, so what are we going to cover? We're going to cover what is Copilot, what is a GitHub Copilot extension, then we're going to go over the anatomy of a Copilot extension, and then we're going to build something. So I live stream a lot, so we're going to do some live coding, so nothing will go wrong, probably. There's an extension template that this whole talk's built off of. We'll get into that too. We're going to talk about the Copilot extension SDK preview and getting your development environment set up, and then we'll wrap things up. So before we get started, hopefully somebody's seen at least one Captain America movie here. I'm going to say story time. So this is something my old CEO, B. Dougie, or Brian Douglas, as some people might know him as, he always likes to tell stories. So why am I giving this talk? I don't work at GitHub. So I worked at a company called OpenSauce up until last November. And we were basically GitHub Insights on steroids in a nutshell. And so we were building out this tooling. And we also had this AI offering called Star Search. So I didn't do the back-end infrastructure, but I built out the whole chat experience in terms of the front end. And at the same time, Copilot was out, but extensions were still fairly new. But Microsoft was one of our investors, and I got a chance to hang with some people from GitHub. So basically built out a Copilot extension for OpenSauce. And that's kind of turned into a blog post, turned into other things, this talk, given a workshop later, I think in a month. So that's pretty much how we got here. This is the Copilot extension template I made. Feel free to QR code it. It'll be up later again too, but this is what the demo will be later. And so let's go over what is Copilot. So probably most of you are familiar with what it is, but just to go over the generals, it's coding assistant, it's your pair programming buddy. It can do inline code completions. It has chat capabilities, so you can ask questions, get answers, refactor files, etc. And it can be extended via Copilot extensions, which we'll get into shortly. In February, it got a new agent mode, so basically you could refactor things, and then it was able to iterate on its own results. So that's fairly new, or as Thor would say, that's pretty fresh. And sorry, Thor Ragnarok is amazing. The other thing that's really cool about GitHub Copilot is it's typically been in Microsoft properties, but they actually created a Copilot language server SDK recently. And what that means is literally any editor can implement Copilot chat. And so right now, where can you use it? So you can use it on github.com. You can use it in Visual Studio for any of the .NET folks that might be here. Visual Studio Code, GitHub Code Spaces. I think they partnered with JetBrains a while ago, so the JetBrains IDEs are there. Pretty recently, I know there's some React Native folks here. Xcode also supports Copilot now. And then there's the Vim, NeoVim, so all the people that say, by the way, I use NeoVim, you can use Copilot chat. And like I was saying, any editor that leverages the Copilot language server SDK. And you can even use it in the command line now. So here's just a little GIF of things going on. Is it GIF or GIF? I don't know. Anyways, there's lots of places you can use it, is the TLDR. So what is a Copilot extension? The name says it all. It literally extends GitHub Copilot. So you can basically create custom AI-powered tools, integrate with third-party services or your own services. You can access files in the editor context. So if you have a file open in VS Code, for example, you can access that as well in terms of the context. And there's two types of Copilot extensions. And the skill set one is fairly new, But think about that as like, like what's the weather today and stuff. Think of it like tools or function calling. And then the other one, which we're going to look at today in terms of the demo, is the agent. So that gives you complete control over the request handling that happens when you ask a question or something in Copilot. You get access to the context if you have those permissions and all the user actions. So pretty much what you've seen in Copilot so far if you've used it, it's just extending that. And like I said, the extensions work anywhere, so literally everywhere except the command line right now. Yeah, GitHub Copilot works in the command line, but not extensions. But everywhere else, it's fair game. So when you call a Copilot extension that is an agent, the thing you need to know is you have to say at whatever your Copilot extension is first, and then whatever your question is. If you put it anywhere else in the prompt, it's just going to ignore it, and it's going to default to just regular Copilot. Okay. I'm going to take a sip of water from the world's smallest water bottle. Feeling like a giant at 5'7". All right. So let's go over what the anatomy of a Copilot extension is. So there's really only two things that are required to create a Copilot extension: a publicly accessible web application and a registered GitHub app. And then the other thing is you need to have permissions set in the GitHub app for Copilot specifically. And you typically want to go with the principle of least privilege, so only set the permissions that you need to. Not by default, but if you want to create a Copilot extension, at a minimum you have to have the Copilot chat permission enabled, and it's read-only. The other thing is if you want to have access to the context, like files and other stuff in the editor, there's also a context permission. That one's optional, just depends what your extension is. And you can see here, so this is a screenshot of, I have like a Olama Copilot extension I've been working on. And you can see here, I get a 401 at first. It's like, it's not authorized. And that's because the first time this particular extension has the permission to access the context. So in the UI, wherever you are, whether that's Visual Studio Code, or GitHub.com, you're going to get a prompt here. And you can say, I want to allow that permission for this particular project or all your workspaces. OK, so let's talk about building. So here's the Copilot extension again. Template, I should say. This is the preview SDK, and we're going to dig into these things, don't worry. And we're going to just work on getting your development environment set up. So there's a few things you need to do. So with the template, we'll obviously install the dependencies. It's a Node.js project. The other thing is, like I said at the beginning, even for development, you have to expose a web application on the internet. And I'll show you how you can do that. And we need to create and configure the GitHub application like I was saying. And we're going to leverage the Copilot extension preview SDK. And I'm going to show you how you can debug the extension. All right, so we're not wrapping up quite just yet, because that's 10 minutes. That would be terrible. Cool. So we're going to look at, this is an actual Copilot extension that I have in VS Code. And we're also going to go over to the developer settings here. So when you want to configure a Copilot extension, I'll create a new one, or we can even look at an existing one actually. And if you're worried about like what are all these steps, the README in the Copilot extension template has literally all these steps, including images to guide you through it. But we can look at like one that I've created already. So there's a few things you need to do. You obviously have to give it a name. The homepage URL, because I'm using this for development, I just have the same URL I'm using for the endpoint. But if this was like a extension you were like putting out in production, you'd have like a branded homepage and stuff. It is a required field. The other one, it's not required, and I was talking to Gregor at GitHub about this, but even though Copilot doesn't require this callback URL, you still have to fill it in. It's just not going to work otherwise. But it's not actually used. It's something in the UI that they're going to fix at some point. And then basically, you don't need to enable the webhook. That's on by default. So there's that kind of settings, and then going to the permissions, like I was saying, you want to go with the principle of least privilege. So in this case here, all we need is account permissions, and like I was saying here, we just need the Copilot chat one set to read only. There's no other option. It's either no access or read only. And if you did want to have access to the files and other context in the other, you could set this one as well. And then aside from that, yeah, there's a Copilot tab. So since they brought out Copilot, this tab exists now in GitHub Apps. So you have a few options here. By default, this is disabled. Now I can't really, oh, well, you can see it pretty well actually, even though it's not zoomed in. But we're going to go with the agent, which is what I was talking about before. If you did want the skill set, which is like tool calling, you would select it as skill set. It's a different project. There's some examples I have in the resources, but we're going to cover agent, like I said. And then aside from that, for the agent definition, you need a URL here. And this is a URL that anytime you make a request or you ask a question in Copilot, this is the endpoint that you're going to hit for your extension. And in terms of the inference description, this was like, I think it was John Willis was saying in his workshop yesterday, this is kind of like letting you know what the agent does. So I just put a test for an extension right now, but you'd put something a little more detailed if you were doing a like full-featured one. And then aside from that, this is already installed for me, but the next thing you would need to do is install it. So that kind of sets you up in terms of permissions and configuration for the GitHub app. And if we go back to VS Code, so I'm just going to hide this for a second here. Essentially, this particular project, I didn't mention this in the slides, but this is a Node.js project. I'm using Hono, and I'm just using their streaming capabilities. But a Copilot extension can literally be written in any language as long as you can serve an endpoint. So it could be Elixir, Go, whatever you like. The only caveat I'd say right now is the preview SDK. It's only available for JavaScript applications. The nice thing is it's all open source. So if you're like, I want to write one in Go and leverage these things in the SDK, you know, run Copilot to generate the Go version maybe, or you know, whatever language you want. So the app is pretty simple. I have two commands here. I have a watch mode. I'm using Node.js actually supports TypeScript now. It strips the types, so I'm just going with the experimental here just to not have any other dependencies. And I'm running in dev mode right now, so we can see this running here. I'm attached on port 3000. And you can see I'm using the JavaScript debugger for VS Code, so you can see the little pause button up here. Now, the thing we were talking about before is you have to have a publicly accessible web app to even test a GitHub Copilot extension. You don't have to use this, but I'm in VS Code, so they have port forwarding built in. So basically, all you need to do is you specify the port. So for example, if I come back here, my Copilot extension web application is running on localhost 3000. So I'm exposing that port, and then you're going to get this custom URL. It's a secure URL, and by default, when you add a port, it's going to set the visibility to private. You need it to be public, because otherwise you're going to get a 401 error, like a unauthorized or can't find the endpoint. And that's basically how you end up running this publicly. Like if I click on this URL now, or let's just copy it. I'm going to go here, and it's the same URL. This is my local host running on the internet, so if you were to go to that URL, you could hit it right now. Please do not DDoS me. Or if you want to make the talk interesting, DDoS me. So that's basically how you have the web app set up for development mode. We've got the GitHub app configured like I was mentioning. And from there, we can actually start using the Copilot extension. If you were to put this in production, I would recommend probably having like a test Copilot extension where you have this development environment set up like I have. And then for your production one, you have the actual URL and all the settings and stuff. I feel like my voice is starting to sound like a frog. I didn't sleep that well from all the flight cancellations from a couple days ago, I guess. But anyways, I digress. Cool. I'm just going to give us some real estate here. There's a shortcut you can do, at least on Mac, you can do Command-Control-I. That opens up Copilot. And I'm going to just open up the index.tsx. It's one file in this for the template. And the goal here is to really just get you up and running, and then from there, you build whatever you'd like to. I'm leveraging the Preview SDK, like I mentioned. So this gives us a few things. There's more than this, but these are the ones I'm using. There's a create ACK event, so an acknowledge event, create done event, errors event, and a text event, and then we can get user message, which basically gets you the last message that they sent in Copilot. And they have a prompt which is basically going to go ask a model. I think the default one might be an OpenAI model. I can't remember, but that's just going to, so we can do the demo. And there's this verify parse request, and that's so we can validate that the payload is actually legit. And so I was mentioning in the Copilot extension configuration in GitHub app that you do have to have this endpoint. This is what we're going to hit. So I'm going to go ahead and just, I think I already have some breakpoints. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and ask a question. And like I said, you have to start off with @ and whatever the name of your extension is. And I have a few installed here right now. If you want to have some fun, install, this is a GitHub demo one, but it's called the Blackbeard agent. So whatever you ask, they answer like a pirate. If you need some comedy in your life. I'm going to go ahead with the one that I have for the template, so @my extension template, and I'm going to ask it a question. So I don't know, we can say like, what is a doubly linked list? And I don't know how to type. Cool. Now I have the debugger running right now. So what should happen, depending on how good the Wi-Fi is at the moment, I'm going to ask the question. You're going to see the UI is starting to work. And we can see that I'm in the live code. So just to kind of solidify what's going on right now, we have a GitHub app running that's configured in your dev settings. I have my localhost running, which is exposed with port forwarding, and that's what's in the GitHub app. And I've just asked a question in GitHub Copilot. It's now hitting the main endpoint, and we've got all this information now. And there's some things we need. So like there's some specific headers in terms of security that GitHub provides. And there's this verify and parse request. So you basically pass in the body, and you can see in here there's a bunch of stuff. The question should be in there. Yeah, it says what is a doubly linked list at the top there. And there's some other context in here. But basically we want to validate the request. It's super important because anybody could hit this public endpoint. And basically if there is an error, we can actually show an error in the UI. And that's something else that's kind of cool about the Preview SDK. There's actually UI components that it will render based on like if there's an error or if you're done, like you'll see it stops processing. If you create the acknowledge event, it starts like the UI updates to show something's happening. So I think it's good to leverage these things. Again, it's only in JavaScript at the moment, but ported it away. I'm sure they would love somebody to put up a PR for like Go or I don't know. Do people create websites in Zig? I don't know. Bun something something. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna let this is gonna time out now. So you see there's an error because I stopped the debugger. So I'm just gonna let this play through. But let's ask the question again. And I'm going to hit that endpoint again. I'm just going to press F5 to let it keep going. And eventually, yeah, that should be it. Now the Wi-Fi, we'll see how quickly it responds. Obviously, this is my development environment. We're on Wi-Fi that everybody is literally on here right now, so it might take a second to, okay, there we go. So it's answering. So what happened here was, we came here just to show that this is my extension running. I have this message that says hi, and I know who you are from GitHub. So I say hi, Nikki T online here. And then there's this, I'm awaiting this prompt, and that's where we're asking a question, and we get a response back, and then I stream out the answer. Now, obviously, Copilot on its own could probably answer this question I had, but this is really just a demo and like a starting point template. But it's just kind of like a good starting point, I think, and leveraging the Copilot Extension SDK, I think it's pretty valuable. So I'm going to show you if it errors out. So I have this in watch mode, so I'm just going to save this. And if there's a valid request, it's going to fail now. So let's just do here. And let's just say, I don't know. What is a B tree? Now, it's going to hit that is valid request again. I'll just close the debug stuff here. Now, it's true, so it's going to hit this here. If I press F5, you're going to see I reported an error, but the UI in GitHub Copilot actually rendered a piece of UI in there specific to the fact that I said this was a error that I'm outputting. Where was it? There's an error down here somewhere. I have a try catch. Oh yeah, here. So it basically creates an errors event. And that's what you see there. So let's undo that. And just doing a quick time check. Okay, we got a few minutes still. Okay, so I've been showing you this in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to just detach the debugger here. But like I was saying before, you can actually access this in github.com or Visual Studio, JetBrains too. So I'm going to go over to GitHub, and I'll ask a new question here. So if you do have Copilot, you should see a little Copilot head here. You can click on that. And so I'm going to create a new prompt here, and I'm going to be using my Copilot extension template again. And I'm going to say, I don't know, what is a Merkle tree? And again, you can see here the UI is different. So there's this like red recording button, but that's basically, it's streaming and it knows that we sent that acknowledge event. So that's how the UI updated. And again, we're on the Wi-Fi, so it might take a second here to spit out the answer. I'm just going to go, okay, there we go. So I think this is something really cool about the extensions. They're kind of like literally available everywhere. There is another type of extension for Visual Studio Code, but it's specific only to Visual Studio Code. I think it's more powerful to leverage the one that you can use anywhere. And there's a lot of companies using this already. I think Sentry has one where you can like create issues and stuff. I think Cloudinary has one. There's basically a lot of possibilities. And like I said, when I was at OpenSauce, I created a proof of concept. And I was able to ask the same questions that I had in our Star Search UI in the app itself, but directly in Copilot. And it's kind of nice because you're literally where you're at in your code and stuff. So I think it's pretty interesting that you can hit this in pretty much any of those properties. Okay, cool. We're going to wrap things up here. So it's still early days for Copilot extensions. I honestly haven't seen a lot of content about them. Like GitHub will talk about Copilot, but I haven't really seen much talk about extensions. So if you're interested in creating content or even messing around with them, it's a good time to kind of get in early. I'd also say expect a Cambrian explosion of Copilot extensions. And like everybody's been saying the past couple days, 2025 is the year of AI agents. And aside from that, if you want to go give the template a star, that'd be awesome. And go ahead and build your own Copilot extension. And that's pretty much it. Thanks, everybody.